Hi, Alex here from Rebeloper.com, and in this episode of our Advent Calendar tutorials, I am going to show you how you can create a button inside SpriteKit. So let's dive in. As you already know, there are a ton of elements you can create in SpriteKit, like Sprite Nodes or SK labels, but for some reason, and I don't really know why Apple didn't include this into SpriteKit, there aren't any buttons. There isn't an SKButton class inside SpriteKit. So I will show you how you can create buttons inside SpriteKit in this episode. Well, there will be two episodes. In the first one, I will show you an easier way, but it will get more difficult when you try to create a huge app, but it is still valuable to know. And after that, I will create a button, a real button inside SpriteKit. Okay, so let's open up our Xcode project and see where we have left off. Well, I have already committed inside source control commit our previous day's work, and I have also created a new branch from the day 6 branch for our day 7 branch. A lot of branches here, but you understand, and you can take a look at it in the previous videos. We have created all of this like this. So if you want to push a button inside a SpriteKit scene, then you kind of make a workaround for it if you know the name of that sprite and act according to that name, or if it has been touched in the touches began function. So first of all, let me just build this on iPhone 10 simulator, and let's see what we have here. Okay, where we left off, and it is a building, and as you can see, we have a sprite here. And if we tap anywhere on the scene, even on the sprite, we are taken to the gameplay scene. So what we want to do is to be taken when we touch only the sprite. So to do that, let us just give a name for our gameplay button, like so, and it should be play button, plain old simple. Now, once we touch our scene, we want to enumerate through all over the sprite nodes. So I will just type in enumerate child nodes with name, and we want to enumerate through all over the data, all of the sprites, all of the tree nodes. Maybe we are adding our sprite through a background sprite, so we want to enumerate through all of them, and we do that like so. And then finally we add our node and our stop here. So let us just go to the code, and if the node.name equals to, and I will just copy this out, play button, and paste it here, then we have access to our play button. Now we want to check if this play button is touched. So what we want to do is node.contains, and here we have to add our CGPoint. So what we want to do is add node contains, and here we have a CGPoint, but we already have access to our touch, and then we are going to create this location CGPoint. So location in a node, that is an SK node, and we will just simply type in self for our scene. So once again, we set if it contains the touch of our node, then we are just simply going to transition to the gameplay scene. Okay, now let us just build and run and test this out. Okay, let's tap outside of our sprite, and as you can see it says going to gameplay scene. That is because we have this touch recognized, but if we go ahead and tap on the sprite, now it has been activated and we are transitioning to our gameplay scene. Good stuff. But what if we have a lot of buttons and all of these looking for the touches inside our touches begin functions is a little bit clumsy, and what if we want to add a title to it or something like that? So to accommodate this, I am going to create a new class. It will be called the BD button for black dot. It will be available on GitHub soon. So that will be our BD button, a real SpriteKit button. So let's go ahead and right click on our Advent Calendar tutorial group and add a new file here. And it will be a Swift file. Let's click on next, and I will just call this BD button and let's create it here. Okay, now we want to import SpriteKit, of course, SpriteKit, and we are going to create a class for it, and it will be of a it will be BD button. Oh, sorry for that. And it will be of superclass. It will be an SK node. And now, what do we want inside our button? Well, we want actually a sprite and some crop nodes and an action, okay? And of course we want to initialize it. So let's go ahead and add our variables inside here. So I will just simply add a variable called a button, okay? And it will be an SK sprite node. Now we want to add a mask to it and a crop node to it. So let me just go ahead and type in var mask, and it will be an SK sprite node and another var crop node, and it will be an SK crop node. Now this is because I want to make a little, let's say, a shadow or something like that when we tap on the button. Okay, and of course I want to make all of these private and private, so we cannot access them through our button. And finally we need an action, and it will be a private action. Again, private var action. It will be an action like so, void action, and this way we can implement our action inside our scenes. Okay, now finally we need to create our init here. So type in init, not this one, just simply init, okay, open parentheses, and I want to give it a name for our image. So let's type in image named, and it will be a string. And finally we want a button action, so add our button action. That will be, don't bother about this syntax, just copy and paste it out. Okay, now we want to initialize it, so go ahead and type in super init. Okay, but before we can do that, we need to add our buttons image. So for the SpriteKit node, so what we need to add here before we add super init is button equals to SK sprite node, and here we take our image named, image and named. Okay, that is good stuff. Now we want to add our mask node and our crop node. So let's create our mask node here, and it will be mask node mask. Well, we just selected the mask, okay, and it will be an SK sprite node of color. And I will just go ahead and select this one, and it will be an SK color. okay, color, and it will be black, and of the size of our button here, button.size. And of course I will set the masks alpha to 0 at this time. We will change that later on. Now it's time to add the crop node. So crop node equals a simple SK crop node, and now we add our crop node mask node as the button. Okay, and finally to add our crop nodes z position equals to 3. We will add other z positions you will see later on. And finally, let's add our mask to our crop node. Okay, and of course now we need to add our action. So action equals button action that we provide through our init. And I will just copy this out because the super init needs to be below all of this. Okay, one last thing we need to add is our enabling of our user interaction. So is user interaction enabled equals to true. Good stuff till here. So we have created our initializer. Let's go ahead and let me just give you some room here and fix this required initialization. Go ahead and tap and fix. Let's hit Command B and let's see if it has been succeeded, and it has. Okay, now that we have our user interaction enabled, now we need to set up our nodes and add our nodes. So first of all, let's create a function here named setup nodes. We will call upon this setup nodes here, and I will just add our function down below here, and let me just add some space here for you to see. So in our setup nodes, first of all, we need to set up our button, and then later on in the next episode we will set up our title label. So for now, let us just set our button's z position to equal 0. Okay, next up we need to add our nodes. So add nodes will be our function name. Let me just copy this out. Func add nodes, and here is where we add our nodes. For the moment we will add our button and our crop node. Okay, so let us just add child button and then add child crop node. Okay, and that is it for our button and crop node. Next up, we need to add our functions to enable and disable the button, because we are going to tap on it and we don't want to make it double tappable or something like that. So what we need to set up is two functions here, and the first one is func disable, and we will just simply disable the button like so. So first of all, we need to create a boolean value here, and that is var is enabled, and for the moment it is enabled, so I will just set it to, well, maybe let's set it to false here, because we are let me just double check my notes here. Yes, it is enabled, so we will check out here true. So if we are disabling, then we need to set our is enabled to false. Okay, that is the first step. Next up, we need to set our mask dot alpha value to be 0.0, and then we need to set our buttons dot alpha value to 0.5, so it may have that transparency and that feeling that this button is disabled. Okay, next up we need to create our enable function. Okay, So we need to set our is enabled boolean to true. Okay. Next up, we need to set our masks alpha value to 0.0, and you might ask, why don't we set it to 1.0? Well, we set it to other values in other functions. Okay, and then of course we need to set our buttons dot alpha value to 1.0, so it may not be at all transparent. Okay, next up is to handle the touches, and we will do that under the add nodes function. And first of all, we will start with the touches began function. So let's just type in here touches began and let autocomplete do its work. So then we will first of all set the mask alpha value to 0.5. Okay, and then we want to run an action. We want to make the button a little bit bigger so the user may see that it has tapped that button. So I will just run a simple SK action here, and I will just simply scale it up by, let's see, 1.05 with the duration of 0.05 seconds. Okay, that is all we need to do when the touches has begun. So when the user has touched this specific button. Next up, we have the touches move, because we need to be aware that touches may move from time to time. Users don't just simply tap on anything, they might just move. So let us just find this auto-completed touches moved function, and now let's check if is enabled. So if it is enabled, then we want to find the location in the touch. So type in for touch in touches, and we will find the location. It will be a CG point. Yes, it will be a CG point, and it is our touch, not touche, touch, and we just autocomplete for now and delete this E here, and it will be the touches location and of course in self. Okay, and now let's see if this touch location is inside our sprite, as we did early on in this tutorial. So if button contains CGPoint, and that is location, then we need to set the masks alpha value to 0.5, and this is where I was talking about, that we need to set the mask to 0.5. Else we need to maybe set it back, and that is mask dot alpha value equals to 0.0, and let me just correct my comma here with a dot. Okay, that is for the touches move. And finally, we need to create our touches ended when the actual action will be performed. So let us just type in touches ended and let autocomplete do its work. Let me just go up here so you may see clearer. And once again, if is enabled, then we run this code again for touch in touches. Let location of CGPoint equals touch location in SK node, and that is the self. Okay, and now if the button contains the location, we will disable this button. Of course, we enable it afterwards, and then we run the action and an SK action with a little delay to enable after that our button. So let us go in and type if button contains, and we will select the CGPoint value location. Then we will run this disable disable our button, we will run our action here, and after that we will run our ASCII action that is a sequence, and we will run two actions. And the first one, let me just add our parentheses here, the first one is await duration, so ASCII action dot await for duration, and we will just wait for 0.2 seconds. We want to wait for the action to complete, okay? And after that we want to run some code, so type in ASCII action dot run, and we will use this block method, and let it return again, and we will type in self dot enable, because we want to use the enable function in our class here. And now that is all for the basic implementation of our BD button. So what is up next? Well, we need to add this button, this play button, onto our main menu scene. So first of all, let us just delete this add button function. Let's just comment it out for now, and all of these things in our touches began, because we no longer need these. We are going to have another approach. So first of all, I would like to have this play button accessible, and usually it is a good idea to have these buttons or any other Sprite nodes accessible globally in our class. Not globally, just in our class. So I will just create a variable called play button, okay, and it will be of type a BD button. Okay, now I will just initialize it here because this way our SpriteKit project takes care of releasing it when you transition to another scene. Okay, good stuff here. If you would rather create this variable inside your did move to view or other functions, it will not be cleared as easily. Okay, now let's create a button, and it will be of type BD button, and let us use the autocomplete. So the image named will be, and let me just go back here and remind you that it is our button play, so the name it is button play. So I would just add this here, and now let's hit return on our completion handler, and here we will do the action that is desired. So for our case, it is this action ACT manager share duration. So I will just simply copy this out and paste it. No, I did not copy that. Let's do that again. Command C and then command paste. Okay. Now this will throw an error, and I will just simply take care of the error by setting the variable to be lazy. So this way we can reference the self. Okay, what is up next? Well, we need to set up some things. So button.zPosition equals to, let's say, 1, and then we can simply turn our button. Okay, and this missing return in enclosure expected should go away. Let's just build this out and see. Okay, now that we have our button, we can simply add our button by setting its position and then simply adding it to the scene. So let's just type out here play button dot position, and that would be a CGPoint dot 0, because our anchor point has been set, our scene's anchor point has been set to 0.5, 0.5. Okay, and finally let's add our child to the scene, play button, and now let's see what happens. And I believe that we have set up everything right now correctly, and we should transition to our gameplay scene. So I would just first try to tap not on the button, so anywhere outside the button. Okay, and now let's just tap on the button, and as you can see, there was a slight animation there where it just popped up and then back, and the mask layer was set, the alpha was set to 0.5, and this gameplay seed transition was activated. Okay, that is really good stuff, and we have gone through a lot in this tutorial, so I will just finish now for this episode. In the next episode we will learn how to add title labels for our buttons and even more. We will just wrap up this whole button creation for SpriteKit. Hope you liked this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe down below, and I will see you in the next one.